Welcome to the Raven Wolf channel. This is Anna, and today I'm gonna start reading chapter 7 from the Mayan Factor. This is the chapter before last. There's only 8 chapters, and I was actually taking a look at it, how many pages was chapter, how long was chapter 7, and it's actually quite long. So what I'm thinking is that I'm gonna try to put 2 Mayan Factor readings a week until we're done with chapter 7, and also chapter 8 is pretty long too. So it looks like I'm gonna be putting out 2 Mayan Factor readings a week, so we can get moving and finish this book that has been so interesting. So anyways, I'm gonna go ahead and start. The title of this chapter is Technology and Transformation. Let me see how many minutes. Okay. So, it starts with Maskul. I guess that's a name. But one thing puzzles me. And then Panawi says, "What's that?" Maskul says, "How it happens that men here are ignorant of tools and arts, and have no civilization, and yet contribute to the social in their habits and wise in their thoughts." Panauer says, "Do you imagine then that love and wisdom springs from tools? But I see how it arises. In your world, you have fewer sense organs, and to make up for deficiency, you have been obligated to call in the assistance of stones and metals. That is by no means a sign of superiority." The conversation between Maskul, an earthling, and Panawi, an actuarian, in John Lindsay's fictional fantasy, Voyage from Actuarius, underscores the debate concerning the nature and purpose of technology, commonly understood as the material extension of our body and a sense of organs. What we think of a history or a historical process is vitally synonymous with the history of technology. The same could be said of civilization. Indeed, the tendency is to view the improvements of creature comforts via some form of technology as the index of a civilized life. A dangerous and subtle materialism is implicit in the definition of things. But what relation does technological improvement have to genuine creativity, or, for that matter, spirituality? On the other hand, the line of thoughts places us in the untenable position proclaiming the superiority of suburban automobile and television existence to that of the aberrant in the outback, dubbed into ochre and cinnabar and chanting ageless resonance to the still living rocks. Of course, it is heretical to voice the thought that the sensory awakeness of the Wait, did I mess up that? Of course, it is heretical to voice the thought that the sensory awakeness of the aborigine is preferable the 20th century technology comfort, which in actually is a closing of the sense field of a narrowing of the perceptions we have of life. Indeed, it is possible that the trap of technology development lies in our creating an environment in which we all receive is the limited frequency feedback of our own artificial devices improvements. What if the trap of civilization is sensory shutdown, that gravity impairs our ability to receive fresh information? The situation could compound in the seductive frame of artificial induced environment, might also condition our ability to appreciate a new sensory input. We might find the predicament of a collective human organism to be akin to that of a caged animal, forcing on the toxic residue of its own waste products. Indeed, when we survive the reality of the worlds of the present moment, this description sees a purpose. These considerations, however, still beg the question, what is technology? If it is so potentially disturbing to ourselves and our host environment, planet Earth, why did we develop technology in the first place? To answer this question and to recall the soul of this book, The Path Beyond Technology, it is necessary to put forth a very simple equation. Prehistoric equals pre-technological. History is equal to technological. Post-history is equal to post-technological. In this equation, the Mayan factor accounts not only for a comprehensive description of the middle term of the equation, but also for the relation between the first and the third terms of pre and post conditions of history/technology. From the perspective of the Mayan factor, history, the exponential spread of communication in the form of material technology, is contained by a function of the 5,200 to 5,125 ton diameter galactic synchronization beam. Indeed, technology as we understand it now and defined it could be described literally as a tool of a synchronization beam. Technology, then, is direct measure of acceleration and synchronization of a DNA in a relation to the manifestation of the light body of the planet. This means that coincidence to the increase of technological application, its feedback is a commensurate quickening of the DNA infrastructure. This quickening of the DNA infrastructure is paralleled by the activation of the planet light body, a process that remains imperceptible until the virtual conclusions of this acceleration process. Through the first 12 Bactun cycles, the acceleration gradually increased, becoming dramatic in the final Bactun cycle of climaxing in the 259th Cantun. Synchronization became the acceleration process in the increase in human birth. The birth of 5 billion humans was heralded on July 7, 1986. Yet it was only 12 years ago that the human population reached 4 billion. Prior to entering into the synchronization beam in prehistoric, the human organism by and large remained in a symbiotic relation with the environment. Fire and chipped stones aside, it was agriculture that hastened the technological imperative that was to be quickened by the beam. As we enter the beam, the tendencies towards material improvement, task specialization, social stratification, and territorial expansion become affirmed as the dominant evolutionary impetus. The view of nature ultimately affirmed by history is anything but symbiotic. Rather, it is that of a master and a slave. As the rate of technological innovation increases through the 5,125-year cycle, so the human organism spreads in a vast artificial communication and social system in a tire web over the surface of the planet. For several millennia, despite less technological advanced barbarian population that inhabited in border regions, civilization defined by the acquisition of fresh territory. By the onset of global industrial civilization, horizons began to dim. Yet, just beyond the self-destructive artificial grandeur of a global industrial civilization is the attainment of the goal, a condition in which acceleration of the change phases into synchronization of wholeness. Assuming the capacity to attain critical synchronization prior to the environment self-destruction, the Armageddon bypass, then we may enter the 260th Cantun in AD 1999 1992 to 2012. Ruled by the exalted 13 pulsation ray and marked by the sign Ahau, presence of the solar mind, this cartoon cycle will initiate the ascendance of the post-presence of the solar mind. This cartoon cycle will initiate the ascendance to the post-historic and hence post-technological condition in which the human organism returns to its symbolic harmony with nature. In no way should this return be seen as an abandonment of civilization, understood as the process of human spiritual refinement, but rather as a passing to more evolved stage of our existence. Let this view be constructed as a neo-romantic utopian fantasy. Let us review the relation of the wave harmonic of a history to the galactic harmonic and consider the fundamental postulate of the Mayan factor. What light is to life? So the 260 unit Tzolk'in is to the 64 unit DNA. And here's the picture. I don't know if I should show it. Let's see how many minutes I've been recording. Okay. Then I'm gonna read maybe 2 more pages. So this postulate defines radiogenesis. Radio refers to the information bearing capacity of a light and a spectral radiant energy. Genesis to the capacity of the light to transform itself into a palpably plasmic and mobile phenomenon called life. From the perspective of the Mayan factor, the relation between light and life is not linear. Casual one, example, first there is light, then there is life, but no one in which life is embedded in a matrix of radiant energy possibilities. This is literally depicted in the Tzolk'in, where the 64 units representing the DNA code occupy the central grid corresponding to 32 units of either side of the mystic column accommodating the loom of the Maya in its crossover pattern. Let us assume that the remaining units around the 64 unit grid represent states of light and radiant energy, unfoldment that stimulously proceeds, follow, and at the same time interprets the evolution of DNA. Since the 64 unit game board of the DNA is contained within the larger radiogenic game board of the Tzolk'in, we may consider the DNA itself as a bridge from one dominion of light of radiant energy to another. By fractal analogy, the stage called history, through technological acceleration, mimics this function of the DNA as a link between 2 radial realms. In the radiogenic proposition, the term history represents an intensification of the capacity of the DNA to artificially or technological bridge, and hence leap from one level of radiant symbiotic understanding and fulfillment to prehistoric to another post-historic. Allowing fractal harmonics their full play, the stage of acceleration technology leapfrog can be plotted within the 64 central units of the Tzolk'in, the whole of which understood as a representation of the entire radiogenic game board. During this passage through the 5,200-ton beam, it is as a technology extruding DNA is completing a circuit through the 64 unit of the game board. Though it is not apparent until the circuit complete once the 64 units have been traversed. The whole game board, let us say, lights up. The lighting up of the game board refers to the final circuit completing synchronization of the DNA, corresponding to the date AD 2012, 13.0.0.0.0 enters the post-history. A further distinction between the technological middle and the pre and post phases is distinction between myth and history understood as a as a qualitative condition of a consciousness. Myth defines the capacity for stimulus, multi-referential resonance that merges being with being. History is the tendency to limit, measures, and materialize in a unireferential direction that separates being from being. Very interesting. From the perspective of the myth, the rays of light slanting through the leaves in the forest are nourishing fingers of the dawn, bringing solar morsels to our waiting cells. A response to the light in the form of chant and an offering of smoke from a circle of stones, inviting the presence of ancestors beings and the great ones who guide us all things, completes the experience. To the historic consciousness, in contrast, the light slanting through the trees, through representing a mystery to some, tell us that another day has arrived, and depending on our needs and interests, whether or not we need a coat and hat, whether or not will be a good day for sunbathing. In other words, the mythic condition constructs from the experience a sacrament or a ritual that affirms the bond between light and greater forces, ultimately the forces of the light. The historic mind uses the experience as an information that determines practical creatures' comfort goals. However, the creature comfort seeking aspects of the history consciousness is actually the feedback effect of the impulse of the DNA to extrude technology. Hence, historic consciousness is but a byproduct of the larger technological bridging process, moving us from a natural symbiotic to another, from one realm of light to another. To gain an even deeper level of understanding, let us put forth more equations. Myth is equal to DNA times light. In this equation, myth or the mythic condition is the self-sustaining capacity of DNA to directly utilize the light, the spectrum of radiant energy, to attain its end. In the mythic condition, therefore, the psychic resonance between organisms and radiant energy is direct and provides both primary nutrients and primary reality. This resonance is depending upon and intensifies as a superior sensory capacity for radiant interactiveness. The experience of the sense, ears, eyes, nose, tongue, body is not only primary, but attuned to nuances that both convey information and expands light. In this condition, the need for artificial inducements to pleasure becomes obstructions to the untrammeled purity of sensory experience per se. Wow, that's very, very interesting. History and historic conditions, by contrast, representing the counters. Actually, I'm just gonna end it there. Yes. Yeah, I'm gonna end it there. And yes. So I'm gonna mark it before I forget. Oops, I just hit the camera. Yeah, I'm gonna leave it right here. And I'm gonna pick up sometime, maybe Wednesday. I'll put up a little bit of more of chapter 7. So I hope you guys enjoy this. It's getting more interesting and more interesting by the minute. It's very cool. I hope you guys are enjoying it as much as I am. So yes, check out the Mayan Factor, and if you haven't seen previous chapters, I strongly recommend it because it will make so much sense to you. So again, thank you so much for watching. I love you guys. In Lakesh. Mwah. Bye.